thousands of videos of beheaded Palestinian babies and children, Palestinian children with severed limbs, killed by Israel. And not a single corporate media outlet has reported on how Israel has systematically beheaded Palestinian children on a daily basis for the last 15 months. And yet every single one of these Western media outlets was so quick to spread the mass atrocity propaganda in order to manufacture consent for Israel's genocide by repeating a story about an incident which never took place.
We have some really disturbing new information out of Israel. The Israeli Prime Minister's spokesman just confirmed babies and toddlers were found with their heads decapitated.
I choked up earlier reading this new revelation about 40 babies being killed.
Oh my God.
And some of them being beheaded. And I was like, how can any human being do that to a baby?
So what message does that send? That mythical beheaded babies, because they were Israeli, are to be reported on when the incident never happened, but that Palestinian babies and children, when they're beheaded and their limbs are severed and they're found hanging from trees with half of their body missing, that they are not worth the coverage to report on their experience, on their premature death at the hands of Israel and the United States. Did you know that Israeli occupation forces tied explosives to the body of an 80-year-old Palestinian man who was forced to clear booby-trapped houses, and once they released him, they shot and killed him and his wife? Did you know that Israeli soldiers were captured on film raping a Palestinian hostage? And when news of this came to light, Israeli far-right politicians and soldiers and ordinary people protested outside of the facility where the soldier was being held, demanding that he be released. And in parallel, the Israeli Knesset engaged in debates on the right of Israeli soldiers to rape Palestinian hostages.
תרלול הזה, שיש מי שבפרקליטות חושב שאפשר לבוא ולעצור חיילים על דברים שעושים למחבלי נוח'בה, לא נגמר. אנחנו לא יכולים להמשיך כרגיל.
להכניס מקל לרקטום של בן אדם, זה לגיטימי?
כן, אם הוא נוח'בה, הכל לגיטימי לעשות לו. הכל. הכל.
One of the soldiers who was involved in the rape had a media tour all around Israeli media stations and took off his ski mask and was revered as a national hero by members of Israeli society. Did you know that a young Palestinian boy by the name of Saddam Rajab was killed in the occupied West Bank after an Israeli occupation soldier shot him in the stomach? Even though the evidence is right there, it was still responded to by supporters of Israel as being fake or being what they call Pallywood, because not only does Israel kill Palestinians with impunity, but Israel's supporters, to believe that their ideology is morally justified, when they do see images of Israel's policies against Palestinians, they just claim that they're fake, that they didn't happen, that they're made up entirely by Palestinians to claim global sympathy. Did you know that Israeli occupation forces recently killed a 2-year-old Palestinian girl by the name of Layla al-Khatib, who was sitting down to eat dinner with her family in occupied Jenin? She was shot in the head by an Israeli sniper. Not only did the Israeli sniper shoot her, but then the Israeli occupation forces prevented her and her family from rushing to get medical care, and she died. This, of course, is not an aberration. This happens all the time on a daily basis. Prior to October 7th, 2022 had been the deadliest year for Palestinian children killed by Israeli occupation forces in the occupied West Bank in 15 years. But did you even know about it? Did you know that in 16 months of genocide in Gaza, Israel has managed to halve the life expectancy in Gaza? If that isn't proof of genocide, I don't know what could be proof of genocide. Did you know that Israel withholds Palestinian bodies and prevents Palestinians that it killed from being returned to their families? Over 600 Palestinian bodies are being illegally held by Israel, some since the 1960s. Did you know that if you go on Google Maps and you look for satellite images of Beit Hanun, you will see that Israel has completely destroyed and erased that village in Gaza, that city in Gaza, and instead replaced all of the buildings, the stores, the homes, the parks, the schools, the mosques, the churches, with thick mud embedded with Israeli tank marks in the shape of a Star of David. Not a single corporate mainstream media outlet covered that story, thought it would be important. Consider, for example, as part of Israel's genocide, Israel has destroyed the overwhelming majority of all the infrastructure that is related to the provision of basic services like electricity, like water, like sanitation. It destroyed 90% of the housing units in Gaza. 90%. If that isn't genocide, I don't know what is. You can't possibly make the argument that the destruction of the majority, the overwhelming majority of all housing units in Gaza does not constitute intent to destroy a people in whole or in part. If you continue to get your information from mainstream media, I wouldn't be surprised if you didn't know any of these stories. But I think we should understand that if any one of these incidents had happened to an Israeli child or an Israeli family, then not only would the media be all over the story, politicians would be condemning it in the strongest possible terms, there would be widespread coverage and discussion about the horrors that that individual had endured. But when violence is carried out against Palestinians systematically in much wider proportions over 76 years, it is something that the global north wants us to accept as a reality, as a status quo, as the default. And as a result, evil is allowed to prevail with absolute impunity. After 15 months of a daily live stream genocide, we're really at a very critical turning point.